in my first startup, it was really, I went about it completely the wrong way. I had an idea, which was a marketplace for services. And then I built something with a team, raised money, and then try to sell it. And just doesn't work. It turns out the much better way to do it is really start with the problem, not the solution or the fundraise. It start with understanding the problem, who faces it, and really understanding the persona that face the problem and see how intensely they have the problem, and then work with them to apply technology to come up with the solution.
Hey, welcome back to the Scale My Clinic podcast. The robots are coming. They've been telling us the robots are coming. They're taking over our jobs, and they are well and truly here. Today with me is founder of CareGP, creator of one of the first AI agents in general practice, Samantha. Welcome, Melvin Chen. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sachin. Great to be with you.
Excellent. So good to have you here. I know all our listeners and viewers are going to want to hear all about the robots that are taking over, but I think it's useful for everyone to understand, I've had the pleasure of speaking to you a bit, and there's a story behind what you've done and how you've gone about doing what you're doing. And so it would be great just for us to get started today, Melvin, just to hear your story. Like, how did you get to this point, like, of founding CareGP? Tell us, who is Melvin and how did he get here?
Yeah, absolutely. Be my pleasure. Yeah, it goes really way back. I was born in China and I grew up in the UK, and there I got to study engineering at Oxford. And I first was exposed to AI all the way back then in about 2006, 2007, and got to learn a little bit about it. But it's taken all that time between then and around 2021 until we've seen AI really come into its own with the application of large language models and neural nets. So it's been a huge journey for AI to get to where it is today. And for the first time, we can see that AI is really solving problems for businesses. And so it's very exciting. So it goes back all the way back then. And fast forward after university, where after I graduated, I spent a bit of time learning the ropes and spent some time in private equity in the UK, got to go to China, Dubai, and then I finally plucked up the courage to start my first startup company when I was in Hong Kong in 2017 or 2015, actually. And that was a health and wellness marketplace. So I've always been very passionate and interested in the health space. So that company didn't succeed that well, but I learned a lot of lessons from that. And fast forward, this is CareGP is my third company I'm founding. Along the way, I also got to work with some really incredible companies. For example, Latch was a company that we grew from pilot revenue to 50 million of revenue and IPO'd on the NASDAQ at 1.6 billion. And that was just an incredible journey. So I've had the fortune of being able to have the different experiences as a founder. And so when 2024, I decided to move over to Australia from Singapore, where at the time I was chief commercial for another health tech company working with hospitals. I decided to really take the splash and start afresh with CareGP. And I was already connected with some of the folks in Australia, looked at the different areas of healthcare, specialist land, GP, looked at radiology, and then decided that actually there's a great problem to be solved in GP land, because as we know, there's a huge admin burden problem. And you have margins for GP practices coming down to almost nothing. You have a shortage of GPs. It's hard to run a GP unless you scale it up because of the cost. And so we resolved to say, how can we solve some of these problems, these admin burden problems with technology? And so I started working with some GP practices, speaking with them, and did a lot of interviews with the receptionists and looked at different problem statements, and finally decided upon two. One was voice and one was document processing. And we decided to really tackle document processing first because it was the more painful problem. Also, we looked at clinical scribes, but there was a lot of people already building in that space, and we didn't feel that AI was necessarily safe for clinical yet. So we decided to start with, how do we solve admin burden for GP practices, and that's the birth of Samantha for Smart Medical Document Allocations Agent. And yeah, we launched in May, and she's off to the races. I think the growth has been through the roof. I think the growth was something like so far for the first 20 weeks, something like 30% week on week. So not one month on month. And now we have, working with more than 100 practices within that 4 or 5 month period. So it's been a journey and an experience.
Absolutely. And so I'm really interested by something you said, or more than one thing, but obviously you first came across the prospect of AI technology, like this is 2025, nearly the end of, as we're talking now, but this was 19 years ago. And so it took from there to 2021 for it to really get anywhere of use. And since 2021, it's obviously continuing to accelerate. And so it must have been a bit of a dream come true when you saw, what you thought was going to be possible actually start to become possible in terms of technology in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been through several winters and summers of AI. The promise was there from the start. I remember back at uni, it was so promising but it was really more of a machine learning at that point. And it took until I think it was 2016, then you start seeing the computer vision come in, and then with some of the breakthroughs in neural nets, that was the real breakthrough of, hey, if we ingest a large amount of language data, this thing actually it resembles intelligence. And so that, I think it's had many winters, springs, and summers, and it's just so exciting that then in 2021 we saw ChatGPT, and it's just testament that if innovators and entrepreneurs like Sam Altman and co can come up with something so incredible, and if you look at the problems and you just persistent in figuring ways to solve the hard problems.
Mm. And so that's interesting. And then the second bit that stuck with me when you were just doing your intro was you said you interviewed receptionists. So you spent time, you'd already decided, I'm going to do something in medical and it's going to be general practice. And so what you decided then was that let me go to one practice, multiple practices, let me speak to receptionists. Can you tell us just a bit about that?
Yeah, so that comes from the learning of how to start a startup. In my first startup, it was really, I went about it completely the wrong way. I had an idea, which was a marketplace for services, and then I built something with a team, raised money, and then try to sell it. And just doesn't work. It turns out the much better way to do it is really start with the problem, not the solution or the fundraise. It start with understanding the problem, who faces it, and really understanding the persona that face the problem, and see how intensely they have the problem, and then work with them to apply technology to come up with solutions. So that's what we did with CareGP. Instead of starting with, hey, here's an idea, it was, let's speak to 100 people and then zero in on the ones that we think that there's a painful enough problem to solve. For example, document processing, which is data entry, right? And if it's painful enough, you build a solution, then that will solve the demand, the growth aspect. Otherwise, if you have a solution that's half-baked, isn't really a problem, no matter how much sales and marketing you put in, it's not going to go anywhere. So we spoke to, initially, we worked with some of the folks that we knew. So there was a practice called Nuvo Health that I was acquainted with. So I started there. And then there was another one called Green Square, and just being introduced to different people through the network. And some of them turned out to be really great contributors. I spent all the time shadowing the receptionist, shadowing the admin team. And then we started to actually figure out, well, how do we apply, which language models do we apply? How do we build this a product that can solve this document processing, importing problem? So that's how it started.
Okay. And so here you are, you've interviewed, like, how many people did you interview?
I think our goal was to interview 100 people. I think we got around that. And then we really focused in on the core, the ones that we thought, okay, the practices that had more admin burden. So the slightly larger sites, the sites that were also had lean, so they didn't have too much excess admin capacity. They really needed every minute of the day. And then we lent into, and Green Square Health was an example of that in Sydney, where they had quite a lean team. They also started an urgent care clinic. So it was just very busy, and they have to deal with all of the 150 120 to 150 inbound documents that the receptionists have to read and then extract 7 details to populate into the best practice by hand, is prone to inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and misallocations. So we blend into that with that practice and a few others and built the product. It actually took 6-9 months to actually the whole process to go build the product, integrate with best practice, pass all of the data security and privacy clearances, penetration testing, cyber certification, all that. And then we finally were able to do beta testing in Q1 of 2025 and then launch in May. So that was a long process, but it was worth it because once we got the problem statement part right, then we knew that it would be something that is applicable to every GP practice or indeed every healthcare provider that has that problem that they need to import documents into a management software.
We'll talk about that next, just before we get, and I think you're going to show us it today as well. So keep watching. But one thing that you just shared is a lesson I've learned in an expensive way as well. And I think for anyone on the entrepreneurial journey, I think it's just worth reiterating that lesson. We can have the best idea, convince ourselves it's awesome, and then spend ages in terms of lots of resources of time, money, energy, building this beautiful product that we're convinced is awesome, but we never actually checked if there was a problem that needed solving with that solution. And so I think what you just shared about your health and wellness versus the way you went about creating Care GP is just a really useful lesson for anyone listening to this. I've made that mistake. I've shared a story here before where I spent hundreds of thousands on lasers and might as well have flushed the money down the toilet. And so, yeah, just a really useful lesson to embed in. Check for market first. Check that there's an actual appetite for what you want to build before you build something. And so you decided we're solving this problem around documents. And so what I've seen we've worked with hundreds of practices and, I've owned a fair few myself. What I've seen is this is one of those areas where sometimes it's just left and then it builds up over time. Some of the things I've been told, our patients are there, so I can't do that right now. We're too busy. We don't have time to do this. A variety of things. And my conclusions that I got to was not really. I think people just don't like doing it generally. And they're just finding a reason not to do it because it's so annoying. And so it either shows up in the pile getting bigger, which then leads to other issues, or maybe it shows up in a doctor getting annoyed that something should have come and it hasn't come yet. Where is it? And it was just sitting there all along. That's what I've noticed. Is that what you found when you were?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that humans are not great at data entry. That's not what we're born to do. We're born to be creative. And so it's a task that oftentimes is sort of done last and done in between seeing patients or greeting patients and tending to doctors, and you do it. And it takes away that attention from the patient and from the doctor. And so it does stack up. It can lead to inconsistencies and errors. And that actually has some clinical consequences. If you don't get a document to doctor's inbox in time, they might show up at the practice and still not be able to get the consult they need because not because the doctor hasn't had time to look at the document, but it just hasn't been imported because the admin staff have been too busy. So it definitely is something that's needed as a solution, but also human beings just aren't that good at doing it because they're just not as good at as an AI for that task of data entry in terms of precision and consistency. But also they're not that many people enjoy it. Some people do, but it's a minority of people that enjoy that painful task.
Absolutely. And then so what I've seen is that, again, from with a doctor's hat on, if you're sitting in the chair, you're checking your inbox and then you find, you're seeing Betty, but you've got John's results in Betty's file, then there's two things that happen. One is just as a non-owner GP, I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? Which other results are in the wrong place? And then as an owner, I'm thinking, what is going on here? Because, it's going to upset the doctors. It's not the standards I want to see as an owner. There's all these things that go on in the mind. And also, if that happens twice and it happens to the same doctor, that could affect retention of that doctor in your practice. And so even though it seems simple, just allocating documents or a set of documents, it actually has wide ramifications when when it does go wrong. And it does go wrong, unfortunately, from time to time. And so I've seen all sorts of ways people have tried to tackle it, like dedicated team members on the role. Now increasingly offshore team managing a lot of this, because then letting the on-site team just focus on what they're focusing on. And so tell us, how have you gone about fixing it?
Yeah, so this isn't a groundbreaking concept in that, and typically that's another thing I learned from entrepreneurship is that if there's no solution at all, sometimes means that there's no market. So we did see that there was a solution out there but it had things missing. So there was a solution that sent documents in via HL7, but it would only send 70-80% of documents. And so there was no human review possible. And so firstly, you can't guarantee that if it's gone incorrectly, you have to go and check in best practice, the database afterwards. And then even more importantly, it only solves 80% of documents. The 20% that don't get processed that need you to go back to the bulk document import, which is the tool to do it manually. So we knew that there was something missing, and one is a human review and one was covering all documents. So we started with that key thing missing and said, how do we solve that? How do we rectify that? But secondly, we realized that OCR had got much better, so optical character recognition for reading the document, but also AI was now really good. The large language models could be used to actually draw insight to figure out, is this a specialist letter versus a radiology report versus something else? So that we looked at which AI models could we use to have that intelligent aspect of it, and then also do the sophisticated cross-checking in the database to confirm and verify the accuracy of information. So I'll show you.
Show us. I want to see.
I'll show you. Sure. And just before I go into Samantha, actually, it's probably good to note, I'll just move you out of the way, that we see the opportunity to create a team of AI agents, not just one. I think Samantha is the one we start with first because it's the biggest problem and most painful problem, but we're building operating system or team of AI agents to, in the aggregate, transform GP practice admin. So for inbound communications, Karina, Veronica for voice communications and appointment booking, Bill for billing and more. So you go and check out our website. We have these other agents that we're working on, but it all starts with Samantha. So that Samantha sort of the gateway. And so we built Samantha. This is actually a sandbox which you can access on our website, caregp.com.au. So you can play around with it, as we will hear. And here we've designed it to be very easy to use, in that not change the behavior too much. So what we did was we looked at the existing workflow, which is to use bulk document import, which is a manual tool in best practice. And we made it the same layout. So you have the document when you upload the document.
I think we're not seeing it at the moment. Is that right?
Yep. So let me actually share.
And of course, we'll put all the details on the website in the show notes, so that in the description we'll make sure that's all there, so that people can find their way.
So I guess you didn't see this part as well. I should have just shared the screen, but here we go. The screen is now shared. So that's our website. We're creating this intelligent automation team of agents for GP practices, and so you have Samantha there for smart medical document allocation, in testing and develop with our existing customers, Veronica for voice appointments, appointment booking, Karina for inbound communications, and Bill for billing. And we're
billing.
and we're building down this team that, as we work with our existing hundreds or so customers to figure out what they really want solved. But it starts with Samantha. So Samantha, I'll just show you here, is designed to be very similar to bulk document import. The document is in the middle. When you open bulk document import, you upload documents. And here we've got some de-identified sample documents as part of the demo. You can access this on the sandbox on our website and have a play yourself. It's just here. So I've pre-uploaded a bunch of documents here. There's 11 documents. So you upload the documents, and then before in bulk document import, you have to read all the information, such as the patient name, date, all the subject, contact, historian, these 7 fields, category, and the user, which is the doctor. And you have to figure out, right? You have to type it all in exactly accurately. And if it's not, it could be misallocated, or it could have the wrong date and could be overlooked. And so what we've done is instead of having you manually do it, Samantha reads the document and intelligently fills out the document very accurately. And it also verifies. So it verifies the patient, not just that the patient first name, last name matches your database, but also that there's identifiers that that different identifiers, such as the date of birth here, are correct that on the document and in the database. So that's verified the patient here, and then also verified
cross-checking it with the database.
Yeah, correct, and cross-check the user. So this is a verified document. All of those verified documents can then, as soon as they've been read, they can go straight in. What Samantha helps you do is actually the documents which are edge cases, which are missing information. So this document, for example, didn't have the date. So Samantha prompts you to solve those problems and get them verified. It actually even reads handwriting. So here it's used this address to verify this patient, but this one's now good to go. There's one other document here that this document was missing the date of birth as an identifier on the document. So it gives you a recommendation that Anthony Charmer, and then you can check, okay, accept that recommendation. And then that's now verified. So once all of them are verified, or the 10-20% that aren't verified by Samantha ready, so these 11 documents, you can then just press one button, auto bulk import, and those go in database in a flash of a button with some confetti. And now they're in the imported documents list down here, so you can check them. But that would have taken, say, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, depending how quickly you are. And we just did that in a matter of a couple of minutes. So that's really the core functionality. We also have another product adjacent to Samantha, alongside that Samantha, which is a desktop application. So it's a desktop Samantha uploader that, once installed on your server, can pull documents onto the web app. And so you don't need to even do the upload process, and you don't have to go and delete, because it auto archives once they're imported. So those documents are imported into best practice, and that's it. And you can do that a couple of times a day. And the benefit is, let's say, for example, one of our practice customers, I think it's Yarrawonga, they have something like 150, 200 documents a day. And they told us that once they had 200 documents, and that would have taken 6 hours, so almost a head count. And with Samantha, they were able to do that workflow, with all of that work, within half an hour. So that's just, it's 10, 12 times faster. And because of the human review, much more accurate. In fact, only something like 10 to 15% of documents require any changes at all to any of the fields. It's so smart is intelligence is Samantha now. So it's only really the edge case documents have missing information that require some manual input. So that's Samantha in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. We might stop the share, and then I've got questions for you now, because now you've got me thinking, which is dangerous. So that's super useful. So I just want to reiterate, first of all, make sure my understanding's right of what you just explained, because it is quite a big change from what we're used to. So what you're saying is, with this tool, the normal documents that we would put into the bulk document import in best practice, instead of that, it goes into Samantha.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So it goes into Samantha. Within Samantha, the system speaks to best practice and identifies, from reading itself with its AI goggle vision, it can visualize any document, and it reads the key fields and matches them, or looks for a match in the database for those 7 areas that you talked about, which are the typical 7 that, when someone's manually entering in the bulk document import, it checks for those. And then when it hits a certain number, it automatically verifies that, yep, I've got a match. Is that right so far?
Almost exactly. It's the 2 verifications across just the 2 key fields, which is the patient name and the user. Those have to be correct for a correct allocation, right? So it checks the identifiers, say the date of birth or the address of the patient, to see if they're in the database and on the document. And that verifies the patient, and then it checks using appointment history, the doctor is the right doctor. So those are the key ones. The other fields, it fills out very accurately, and you can override any of the fields, including the patient and the user. And so the verification is really just on the patient name and user, and every other field is filled out using smart logics. For example, categories and maps to store in mapping, store in etc.
Got it. Okay. So then at that point, it either verifies because it's hit those two, which is name, date of birth, and user, or it says unverified, and then there's a manual check just to double check to make sure.
It will say check, and then it will guide you through and say, hey, there was no identifiers found on the document, so you have to really approve the recommendation that Samantha's given you, or the doctor wasn't found, and you have to go and just check it and then hit approve recommendation or find the doctor.
Got it. And so the only ones a human needs to check are the ones that Samantha says check. So it's AI plus human, really. And then you press one button, and then from there it goes to. I saw when you were sharing, some of them went to the inbox and some went straight to the patient file based on some. So you can set some predetermined rules of which things require a doctor review and which things can go straight into the patient file.
Yeah, because different practices have different rules around which goes straight to patient's file and which ones have to go by a doctor inbox. We let the clinic triage that off at the beginning. So you set up a doctor's inbox folder and a patient's file folder, and then Samantha Uploader will pull from each of those into Samantha, and then it will already know that those are for either doctor's inbox or patient's file. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. And then it gets to the doctor and they just do what they do. And along the way, what you also showed is it can read some handwriting, it can read normal reports that come through, and it has a good stab at most text. And if there's any doubt, it flags, well, can the human have a look at this, please, to double check me?
That's exactly it. The other benefit is that it generates a more comprehensive subject line with clinical terminology, which you might not expect every receptionist to type out. And it same for the subject. And furthermore, there's a self-learning function that you can turn on, and it learns the last 5 times if you did make edits to the subject or the contact. So there's some quality aspects there as well, which are just extra bells and whistles.
Right. So an example might be, rather than just saying radiology report, it might say which someone may manually just pick from a pick list. It might say radiology report, ultrasound, kidneys, urine, bladder, or something.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay. That's really, really cool. And so what you found is examples of it reducing time to allocate documents by 80 or 90%, that's major. And so that's cool. What happens to the humans that are doing it, that were doing it?
Absolutely. They now free up so they can spend the time more with patients and with doctors and doing other tasks such as running campaigns or doing recalls or chasing up debt that needs to. There's a lot there. There's the practices that we have initially started to really focus and target are the ones with a lot of admin burden and not enough reception hours and time. So there's always reallocating that to other tasks. Actually, going forward, we're now starting to build other products such as one I'm really excited about is more of an AI-enabled CRM for the patient that allows you to run campaigns. So then they'll be able to use some of those other agents to think about how can we service patients better and bring them better services and work on other things. So far we've heard of no one where it's okay. So pretty much all of the practices we work with, they've talked about reallocating that attention towards more high value tasks versus I don't think I've heard of anyone being sort of losing their job from this, because it's just there's so much to do in terms of providing better service in the practice.
Awesome. And then I suppose in this profession and this industry, everyone's very, very wary of privacy and security and those aspects and the potential vulnerability of data, sort of, because it's on the, it's going through a website and being uploaded. Like, what reassurances can you give people about that? Like, what checks and balances, or what are the security considerations that you've gone through? You talked about some stuff early on, but I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So best practice is very stringent policy in order to become an integrated partner, you have to pass their data privacy and security measures. And there's a few areas. One is data sovereignty. Is that you have to ensure that the data, in compliance with the Data Act, is sovereign on servers inside Australia. So that's one component. Data sovereignty, very important. You have to encrypt data at storage and rest. That's very important. And then you have to also ensure that there's when people logging in, you have to ensure that it's the right person. And so multi-factor authentication, that's very important. So we have to comply with all of those. We have all of all of the data stored on local, processed and stored on local servers. So they're not, importantly, it's not being used for training of these LLMs. So it's on local servers in Australia. Everything's encrypted at storage and rest, and then we have MFA to prevent people logging in. And finally, people ask about what happens with the data. Do you store it? Do you not? And the answer is we can, as a default, we allow you to select to pick. Do you want the data to be deleted straight away, or do you want it to be stored for, say, a month or a few weeks, so that you have access to look for a document if you misplaced it? So we give you that flexibility, and we can delete that data as soon as it's used to process the document. And so we give all of that control to you, and we were very transparent about that. So those are the key aspects: is data sovereignty, is it here, is it's not being used for training, so that your data is not being exposed outside of Australia. It's everything's encrypted at storage and rest, and then you have very strong policies around multi-factor authentication, so that only the right people can get in. And finally, the how long data retention is that we give that to the customer, and they can choose to delete right away or store for a period of time before deletion.
Awesome. And so, Melvin, if someone wants to have a closer look, we'll put the website in the show notes and the description that goes with either the video or the audio version of this. If they go to your website, they can book a time to have a look and have a play. What's the best thing they should do?
Absolutely. So they can go on a website and book a live demo. And because we're integrated, you book a session with me, you turn the integration on, we can set you up. We can show you the live demo and how it works. And then that also kicks off a no obligation free 2-week trial. So you can trial to see if it works for you. And that's it. And there's also a demo video and the ability to do the sandbox and play around with it on the website. So that's the easiest way, is go and book a live demo, and then you'll get on a call with me directly, and we'll walk you through it step by step.
Awesome. So we'll make sure all those details are in the show notes. I think it's a fascinating peek into what the future holds and the potential. If we can free up our people and they can be providing more personalized attention to patients and doctors alike, then that's better for all of us. And for the people themselves, they don't have to worry about doing the tasks that many of them don't want to be doing. Melvin, I really enjoyed hearing about CareGP, about Samantha, about how Samantha came to be. And I'm really excited about, what you've got coming up. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you again on here and sharing some of the further developments that are ahead on this AI journey. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sachin. We're just getting started, and look forward to unleashing some more of our other agents as we build them going forwards. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Take care.
Bye.